Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Around the Corner podcast series where we'll discuss the latest scientific discoveries, technological advances, and what is around the corner and what is about to come, advanced material innovation and a paradigm shift as a result of the COVID-19. Today with us, I have Dr. Deji Akinwande, Professor of Electrical Engineering, Computer and Material Science from University of Texas in Austin. Deji, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. How are you doing today?
Zina, it's great to be on this podcast. I'm doing quite well. Rode my bicycle today and the sun is out, so I feel very good.
I'm glad to hear that. Deji, you are a fascinating person. I remember the first time I met you when we were having this conference in Austin. I came to your office and you were petting this white tiger toy. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I usually have a pet in my office just to relax and to rub on something. So obviously we're not allowed to bring actual human pets or live pets. So I have like a teddy bear or something. So this is a very good way to relax sometimes after you've worked so hard.
It is good to know. And I'm pretty sure you cannot bring a white tiger to your office no matter what.
Yeah. Not in the current era.
Probably not. Well, I am really excited to hear about yourself. I remember at some point we were talking about your walking journeys, your scientific kind of discourse. I just want to know more about you. Who is Deji? Tell us all.
Yeah, so Deji, unlike what you just said, I'm actually fairly boring. I'm delighted you find it exciting, but I think I'm actually quite boring. Well, in terms of career-wise, I'm a professor. So basically, my everyday activities that define my life are really centered on research. So going into the lab and conducting research with my team of students and scholars, and then teaching, obviously teaching both undergraduate students and graduate students. So I really enjoy that. Sometimes that's obviously very challenging, and especially in this period of virtual learning, that can be quite challenging, but I enjoy bringing innovation to the classroom. And then service. So, I serve on different committees, and one of the ones that I'm most delighted about is the committee to improve diversity and equity in engineering, in STEM fields. This has always been a challenge for the last couple of decades. And I think it's about time we make significant progress there. So those are my professional activities. But there's a saying, I think the saying is, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So obviously I don't want to be too dull. So I engage in a lot of extracurricular and recreational activities. I do enjoy horseback riding, especially Western style. I enjoy playing
And you
soccer.
say you're not cool.
Well, horses actually also quite like me. They're, to some extent boring, but can be very exciting when you go out on the field. And I've been doing martial arts for a long time. And recently I picked up swimming because I've always wanted to swim, but I was always afraid of drowning. So finally I said, let's face my fear. I'm still alive, so I thank God for this. And then I've also picked up skiing. I started skiing this year. I haven't broken a leg yet, and I hope I won't break a leg. But I want to finally get to a point in which I can ski the Black Diamond slopes. So that's my goal in life now, to ski on the Black Diamond.
You are so active. I did not know you were this physically active. I learned something new about you and your interests these days. You brought up a very good point about diversity and inclusion. I was going to ask you that question later, but since you brought it up, it's such a great timing because we are truly going through this tumultuous times these days. It's what is on our mind, everybody's mind these days, diversity, inclusion. You're one of our brightest minds. If you could do something, if you had the resources to do something, what would you change? What can we do realistically in a tangible way?
Yeah, so Zina, that's a very great question. As you mentioned, this is a prominent issue. It has been prominent for some time now, and it's even more so, especially with recent protests surrounding the Black Lives and other issues of social injustice. So I want to thank you for raising this issue in this podcast. And maybe I'll make a few comments. I think it is very important for everyone to realize the Black people matter. The future of the world, I think, according to population statistics, will consist of a large population of young Black people. So the kindness and talent of Black people will be necessary to make our connected world a happier and better place. And I think I want to clarify something from an educational point of view, especially from a lot of people misunderstand certain aspects. And so when people say that Black lives matter, it doesn't really mean that other lives don't matter. In fact, all lives matter. I think what is meant is that Black people especially suffer a high level of persistent discrimination and injustice in the United States and some other countries because of the color of their skin. And it is time for us all to come together to, I guess, overcome this racial injustice. People should be judged by their character and talent. So I think if I had the opportunity, and I do have some opportunity, although quite limited in my role, I think the very important thing is to really foster collaboration and social interaction. People should get to know each other, and it's through these friendships that you develop that one can begin to understand and respect and even love those that are very different from them, those that have come from a very different background. And when you're friends with someone, you always want the best for them. So this is what I try and do in my classroom to foster team projects so people get to know each other. So they're not learning about people from the news or from some reports. They know individuals from face-to-face and social interactions. And I think investing in this kind of collaborative things that promote social interaction is a great way to kind of promote equity. Mm-hmm.
Those are great points. Deji, in terms of STEM education, which is something near and dear to our hearts, how can we ensure that more minorities and more diverse group of students and young people are going to be interested in science and joining some of those areas where they might not necessarily think that they are suited for?
Yeah, that is a great question that has been asked, and it continues to be asked today. And there have been many ideas, but for whatever reason, a lot of these ideas have not been successful. So I think this is a very, very serious problem that requires a national level effort to promote STEM education, especially among underrepresented groups and people that would otherwise not consider this field.
Yes.
So this has to start really from the beginning. We have to revamp our complete educational system from the very beginning, because by the time you talk about high school, that's already almost too late. If high school students already lack the interest at that point in their education, it's already too late. So we need to go back to the beginning to really promote discovery education, to promote entrepreneurial and kind of project-based learning. And these are the kinds of experiences that would foster interest in STEM education, like rather than heavy focus on examinations and grades. We need to really promote self-learning, discovery learning, allow ample room for failure, because this is what research and STEM is about. So this is a very different model than what we have today, but there's some countries in the world, especially in the Scandinavian places, that are doing it, from what I can see and what has been reported, an outstanding job promoting this kind of discovery learning and research really from a very, very early age.
Those are great suggestions, and there's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done. And when we need to start somewhere, and I believe that each of us need to look inside and say, what can we do? Not everything starts at institution level, it starts with us. Whatever we can do in our platform, we need to take a step. And I
Exactly.
wanted to relate that to the scientific work that you're doing. I've been fascinated by the research that you've been doing in the past few years. I want, from your own words, which ones of the work that you've done in your career stand out to you in terms of their impact on human life? And you've done some fascinating things. So tell us all about, dazzle us with all the interesting research you've done.
Okay, Zina, that's a lovely question. I have to admit, I'm too humble to really address this question at face value because I don't want to be guilty of boasting about some of our research work. So I would have to say that also at the same time, to really measure impact, you have to wait a sufficient number of years to see how that work translates to applications. So many of our work, it's still relatively young in that kind of time frame. But indeed, there have been several work that I am very proud of, and it is enjoying some translation to applications. And one of the work, I guess the first work that we did on flexible electronics, we started this with this nanomaterials of graphene. And now this is really a major focus area for many groups and industrial activity in Europe, in Asia, in America. So the promise of this flexible, it actually reminds me of a movie. I forgot the exact name of the movie. I think it's Ferris Butler Graduate High School or something like this. But it says the future is plastic. So what does that mean? So in that movie, they were really talking about credit cards, but we can also apply the same saying to flexible electronics, making electronics on plastic substrates. So that is has many advantages. One is it's environmentally friendly and sustainable, unlike today's your mobile gadgets. And it's a lower cost. So you're talking again about equity. It's affordable to people that have been left out in the digital divide today. So I'm very proud of this work. It's still ongoing, actually. And in fact, that flexible electronics work led us to wearable electronics, where we came up with the graphene tattoo. And so this graphene tattoo has some remarkable advantages. It can monitor all your vital signs, including blood pressure, a lot of electrical data coming from the body that can correlate to your health. And now we're trying to advance this for mobile health. So there's a company trying to commercialize this technology. So we're very delighted about this. And actually that wearable work somehow gave us a segue into doing sensors, because the wearable tattoos in a way is a sensor of the human body. So that led us to sensor research using these graphene materials, and ultimately that has now led us to our most recent ongoing activity on sensing and detecting the coronavirus. So I think this kind of connection of research, where we started from one area, we didn't know where we're going, but we've gradually been following a path that we see as we continue this journey, has been very enjoyable, and I believe it's having an impact.
That is great to hear, and I really do want to learn a little bit more about the recent work that came out of your group, which is this potential of using this test for understanding if we have COVID or the flu. I don't know if I actually explained it right or not, but please tell us more about it, because I'm sure everybody's excited to hear that.
Yeah, so thank you for raising this up. So this is our most recent research trying to address this important public health issue. And so we started sensor work about a few years ago. In fact, I had a visiting scholar, a very outstanding lady, come from Nigeria to help me launch research. And that research was really to sense iron deficiency in children, so pediatric iron deficiency. So we use this graphene platform, and I didn't really think it was such an important research at that time, but it turns out to be quite important because it developed the platform that we're using now for coronavirus. And the main thing in that research, when she came from Covenant University in Nigeria, is that she brought this expertise of functionalizing graphene with antibodies. and I'd never done this kind of antibody functionalization before. So she brought that expertise. So for iron deficiency or iron sensing, you need to get an antibody that corresponds to iron deficiency in the human body. And so that gives you selectivity, only detects iron. So taking that idea, me and my postdoc, Dimitri, who worked with Dami from Nigeria, Dami has returned now back to Nigeria. We said, hey, we can use the same idea for detecting the coronavirus because the antibodies of the coronavirus have become readily available. And these antibodies are the immune system response to the virus within the body. So people that have experienced the coronavirus, they have these antibodies are now commercially available. So we now use this to functionalize the graphene because graphene is very, very sensitive, but it's sensitive to everything. So by using the antibody, we make it selective to only one thing. So that's really the advantage here. And so, of course, there are several groups across the world doing this, and there should be, because this is a matter of global public health. But what we're doing that is different from others is, I like to say, winter is coming. So for those of you that have seen the Game of Thrones, you understand that saying. That means you have to fight two wars in the winter. So we have to fight two wars. One is the coronavirus and one is the flu. So we need to actually be able to simultaneously detect both of them because a person can have the coronavirus or have the flu, or in some cases have both. So being able to test in one setting for both of these viruses is very critical in the winter. So we also have the antibody of the flu. So on our graphene platform, we can functionalize with the antibody of the coronavirus and the same chip functionalize with the antibody of the flu. And so when you take a nasal swab or a saliva droplet, you drop it on this field effect sensor, it can tell you the three outcomes. Someone has a coronavirus, someone has a flu, or someone has both. And the fourth outcome is they're negative to all of this. So that's the essence of the sensor.
This is fascinating. Well, one of the questions on everybody's mind is how far away are these advances and these discoveries from being able to impact all of us to come to the commercial sector and to the market? How far away do you think we are?
Yeah, so I've been on several interviews already, and this is the same question I am asked. Even the sponsors are asking us this question because we have a special grant, which is the fastest grant from the National Science Foundation to accelerate this research. Mm-hmm. So our timeline is that in 6 months, we'll have a prototype diagnostic sensor. And then from there, we'll be able to scale it up. There's still a scientific question that we need to clarify. So we're doing those scientific testing right now with inactivated viruses. Obviously, we cannot work with live viruses. So with inactivated viruses, and those tests will be concluded in a couple of months. And then the plan is to work with live viruses. Actually, in that regard, we have a significant challenge because working with live viruses is not trivial. Actually, at the university, there is no lab that has a safety approval to work with live viruses. So we will need some partnership with other parties that can help us in this regard. So ultimately, the timeline is also a function of our access to facilities and resources beyond what we have at the university.
That's such a great point, and maybe it is actually a point that I can tie to why we started the Advanced Material Pandemic Taskforce, this global initiative, that public interest initiative that we started to kind of see how can advanced materials solve some of humanity's most immediate challenges, such as COVID. And some of us do not realize in our fields how arduous this path can be for us to fast track these activities, and how we need to all come together as a community to be able to solve some of the challenges. For example, access to live virus. We do have labs across the world that might be right now, as we speak, working on graphene or other platform with live virus, but we need to be able to bridge those partnerships, those collaborations, and be able to to create that platform where people such as yourself, which with great research, but they have this roadblock, they will be able to find answers to that, and for all of us to be able to collectively put together this roadmap that tells us how can our materials help human life, which be
Yes.
your solution.
Yeah, this is very important. And I think for these partnerships, obviously people that have, specific expertise and resources, there has to be a motivation for them to also partner with other people that have ideas. So somehow we need to form an ecosystem where it's a win-win for all parties in the pursuit of public health.
And that is one of the reasons why we do have that working group that we started on Applied Public Health and EHS, which hopefully through the work that this working group is doing, we will be able to have a matrix of what are the regulatory requirements, and at the same time also a list of who are the folks in the world who have access to live virus that we might be able to kind of put together a rapid access platform where people such as yourself will be able to have access to live virus. Long ways to go, but we all got to start somewhere, right? And I think that is something that is on our minds to be able to all come together. It's really heartwarming to see how everybody is actually very excited about collaborating on some of these issues.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is one of those things, research and development areas that affect all of us, right? It's not about benefiting one person or the other. We're all in this together. So I think this is a perfect example of multidisciplinary, multinational collaboration opportunity.
Deji, how has COVID changed us? How has it changed our society, the way we live our lives, the way we collaborate? It's really having an impact on the fabric of society and who we are at a core. What are you seeing outside of our own scientific fields? What's happening?
Yes, so this unexpected virus has, as you mentioned, brought some changes. Obviously, not all change is welcome, but some changes are probably yet to stay, and they have some benefits. From my point of view, in my experience over the past couple of months, I think we're going to see a greater momentum towards online education and learning. So COVID has somehow made it quite clear that classes and fields that you thought were not amenable to online education can be made amenable to online education, and experiences that you thought were impossible virtually can be made quite reasonably engaging virtually with all this virtual platforms. So I think that's one area that there will be greater momentum. And if that becomes a sustained trend, I think there's some benefit in some aspects. For example, the cost of education, which has been skyrocketing, many universities may come down because you need less resources to host the online learning platform. So there's still a lot of debate on this because student experiences are not as positive so far with online education. So we'll see how that goes. Another is the rise of virtual conferences. Now every conference so far is virtual. And I have mixed feelings about this, but one thing that we can learn from these virtual conferences is, almost all the virtual conferences I have attended in the past 2 months, all of them have had record attendance, more than they would have had if they were physical. And some of them have been at no cost because they realized this was an opportunity for them to reach crowd that they would normally not reach. So I mean, many of us prefer physical conferences, but I think this situation has made it clear that there's room for both physical and virtual conferences, and maybe even a hybrid in which you could have a physical conference and have a virtual element to engage those that may not otherwise be able to attend it physically. So this is very beneficial, especially for areas of the world that have limited resources to travel, like in Africa, South America. So that would greatly benefit STEM education and research in those regions of the world.
That's a great, wonderful point. But as you mentioned, as Fantastic as these virtual forums are, nothing replaces some of those other elements of human interaction that we all need for collaboration and partnerships. Is there any way that advanced materials, if you have to get creative, our materials can help in the long run with going back to perhaps physical events, with any of the needs that the event industry and the conference industry might have? Is there anything we have, any solutions we might have that would bring that about faster?
You mean bring about the physical conferences?
Forms faster, yes. Is there anything that our materials can do? I don't know, with flexible electronics. I mean, one of the areas where we're thinking about is that when you go to a meeting, the first thing you have is that you have a program. Probably these papers are going to go away. So
Yeah, yeah.
there's going to be a big change coming. Is there anything that, off top of your head, you can think about with two-dimensional materials that would be able to change the kind of the face of the conference event industry?
I'm not so sure, actually. Obviously, one aspect of a physical conference that is very difficult to replicate in a virtual setting is demonstrations. And so, if you wanted to demo, a gadget made from advanced materials like flexible electronics or sensors or tattoos, it's very difficult to provide that experience in a virtual setting. So there's clearly room for physical conferences, and I think many of us would prefer this so that we can have this live interaction that is almost impossible to get from a virtual event.
Hopefully things will be resolved as soon as possible and we'll be able to get back to a hybrid now that we've learned the benefits of virtual forum and accessibility of information and knowledge. Hopefully we'll be able to go back to a hybrid model as soon as possible where we can get both benefits at the same time.
Yes, exactly.
Deji, I have another question for you. In terms of what we are facing right now, one of the challenges that a lot of the institutions have, especially in the scientific field such as yours, is that we need to go back to lab and we need to do our research. It's not all in simulation and theory, and everybody's having challenges with opening up clean rooms and engineering and physics labs. What are the operational methodologies that you have put into place or your university has put into place for your students to be able to go back to work and be able to do research?
So again, this is one of the outcomes, positive outcomes of this virus situation, is that there's been now a lot of collaboration among universities to kind of establish best practices in a pandemic world. So that means, if you go across many universities, we're basically following the same best practices in terms of how do you practice social distance, establish contact tracing in the event of infected person, cleaning procedures, and those elements that are recommended by the World Health Organization. So we're doing the same thing because of the distancing requirements. Our university and many others are not at 100% capacity. So we at 1/3 or 33% capacity. So those that has some benefits. The benefits are those people selected can go to the lab and do their research, and there's less crowd there. But unfortunately, the 2/3 of the research fellows or students that are not selected, that means their research is stunted, and so their graduation may be impacted and their contribution intellectually will be reduced. So it's a pro and con, but this is currently where the situation lies in a pandemic setting. And the idea is if the number of cases begins to drop, then the research capacity will increase and more people will be allowed in the lab. Unfortunately, that's not the case, even though that's what we're hoping for. As you know, there are a record number of cases now all over the country. So in fact, we don't know if the research capacity is going to increase anytime soon, and it may even go back to zero, a lockdown situation. So this is all the more reason why everybody has a role to play to really make sure that they're practicing social distancing, wearing a mask, and avoiding crowded social interactions.
Mhm. And Deji, as a last point, to summarize this, how do you think advanced materials or our two-dimensional materials, how do you think they have the capacity of helping in situations like this? So, is there something we can do better? Is there something we need to be implementing so that these products and these discoveries actually can make it to the market faster and solve something? What is the potential?
Yeah, so in terms of applications, of course, ideas are critical, and many of us have ideas. But to really bring something to impact, we need commercial partners. We need startup companies, small businesses, large businesses. These are the partnerships that take prototypes towards products. And so I think if advanced materials can bridge that gap, bring in partners that already have capabilities with the innovators that have ideas, that can really accelerate. So, and this is something that I've been engaged with. In fact, this graphene sensor, I've already talked to two companies. You know both of them actually very well, and they're both interested to scale up, these sensors to the next level. So I think partnership is what we need between academics and industrial entities.
That's an excellent point, and what we all need to be working on together on a global platform to be able to facilitate those partnerships and make things happen as fast as possible. Well, Deji,
Yes.
I really very much enjoy speaking with you and learning about what you and your group is doing. But before I let you go, I have one last question for you. What are you cooking tonight?
Well, that's if I cook at all, but I was thinking of making tacos. I think I've come up with a very unique taco. It's called a plantain taco.
What's in it?
It has plantains. Do you know plantains?
Yes, but what else? You're not just putting plantains
Oh, yeah,
in your
yeah,
taco, right?
yeah. Because it's going to have plantains, it's going to have avocado, it's going to
Avocado.
have some green veggies, and then some spicy sauce. So I've been experimenting with this plantain taco. So I think I may go vegan tonight. I'm not vegan, but I like to enjoy vegan from
Well,
time to time.
how do you make the plantains? Do you cook them? Do you fry them? What's the
Yeah,
procedure for it?
you fry them. You fry them so they're a little bit soft. So you don't fry them to completion. So they're not golden brown. Golden brown means the plantains are well cooked. So you fry them so they're soft brown. And then at that point you stop because you need to remove the oil. And then you mix in the veggies and other things. And then you continue frying the veggies and the plantains together. And then you can serve it with avocado on the taco.
I might have to try that. That is so unique and creative. Maybe it is your Virgo. Okay, you and I have the same birthday. Maybe that's
Yes, yes. You know how to make tacos?
I don't make tacos, but now you inspired me to go make plantain tacos.
Actually, to be quite frank, I was challenged by a friend 4 months ago, and I made my first taco 4 months ago. I never made a taco in my entire life. And she told me, she said, it's easy. And indeed, it was easy. And my first taco was a mushroom taco. So it was completely vegan. And then I said, okay, let me mix it with plantains. And then it tasted even better. And so now I make tacos every week.
That is amazing. You gave me something to think about. So I'm going to do that maybe sometime soon. Well, Deji, thank you so much for your time. I know you're extremely busy, but it was an absolute pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure. So I hope we'll be connecting physically sooner than later.
Thank you so much and have a great day.
Okay, cheers.